Hello everyone and welcome to yet another NuclearCraft update video. This time we're looking at versions 2.12 to 2.12h. A couple of big things in here and a couple of fixes and changes along the way. The first big thing to talk about, of course, is the addition of the molten salt reactors and heat exchangers. So a lot of the molten salt reactor parts were already in the game, but it finally got completed in 2.12. As did the heat exchangers, and I won't go fully into detail, but effectively with the molten salt reactors you can now use molten salt fuel and NAC-based coolant to produce hot coolant, which you then pass through a heat exchanger to produce steam. And the idea in NuclearCraft is to then put that high pressure steam through a steam turbine and then go through a sort of loop there with the steam and the condensing and so forth. But for now you can put it through a second heat exchanger or loop it back through the first one to make normal steam that can be used in extreme reactors or Mekanism or advanced generators turbines. So if you want to learn more about the molten salt reactors and heat exchangers, go check out those spotlights, the separate spotlights on them. Moving on, over here we added speed upgrades. So speed upgrades got added, I think 2.12F or G. So now you can put these alongside your speed upgrades and not produce or not use quite so much power. So before, you remember the speed upgrades by default increase the speed linearly, but actually increase the power used quadratically. So for now, we see here the speed multiplier and power multiplier is 1, and then as we put more and more speed upgrades in, this power multiplier starts to get really, really high. But what you can now do is get some energy upgrades, and that will actually start to bring the amount of power used down. So you can see it's now at 27.5, now it's at 18.33, and you can put up to the number of speed upgrades that you have in the machine. So right now we have a power multiplier of 5.5. You'll notice that if I put any more in, doesn't do anything. So the maximum number of energy upgrades that are going to have any effect is the number of speed upgrades in there. And the reason that is happening is because I don't want people to just chuck loads of energy upgrades in the machine and then suddenly the machine uses like 1 RF per tick. So this is meant to be a sort of balanced thing, so you have to make sure that you have the same, the number of speed upgrades that you want to put energy upgrades in before any more will do anything. So once again, it's at 12.0 and 6.5, and one more doesn't do anything. So that is the general gist of how speed upgrades work, and they decrease the power use linearly as well. So as you can see, it's combating the power multipliers somewhat, but not the whole way down. Moving on, Mekanism gas support. So this is quite a big thing. This was added, I think, 2.12. So you can sort of mix and match with the Mekanism gases. So here I've got some water vapor coming into an electrolyzer, and it gets sort of automatically turned into liquid water when it goes into the NuclearCraft machine. And now it's getting turned into hydrogen, oxygen, and deuterium. As you can see here that I'm actually pumping out the gases, and I'm getting hydrogen, deuterium, and oxygen. And you can sort of mix and match. So for example, if you wanted to pipe out the hydrogen as a gas and the deuterium as a gas, but the oxygen as a liquid, you could certainly do that by using the right filters and so forth. You can of course pump Mekanism gas into the fusion reactor and stuff like that. So basically any Mekanism gas that has a fluid counterpart in NuclearCraft machines, you can just sort of mix and match them and interchange them however you want. So hopefully that works as intended. There's been a few crashes with this, but I think they're all fixed now. So have fun using that. Moving on, there were a lot of changes to the way machines and recipes and all sorts of things updated. So you should see a pretty major, especially in the fission reactors, you see a pretty major performance improvement. And there are still some things wrong with the some of the cobblestone generators and stuff like that, which still produce quite a lot of lag, but I'm working on them. But for now, these fission reactors produce far less lag. I don't have lag goggles installed, unfortunately, but if you use lag goggles and look at how much a fission reactor was producing before the update and after, these produce so much less now, and that's 2.12 H or G or something like that that was changed. So I highly recommend updating to the latest version for that if you're having problems with lag. There was also some things in the GUI where if you had too much cooling going on, or the big numbers were getting too big, then sometimes this number would like underflow or overflow and you wouldn't get the right number in here. That's been fixed as well, so if you're going to build really, really big reactors, don't worry, the numbers will actually show correctly. Another thing that's been fixed is that fusion reactors, they used to sort of pump their outputs into their inputs again if these were empty. The reason that was happening was basically because these sort of dummy blocks that make up the core were pushing into each other, and so they were sort of pushing the fluid back into themselves. So that's been stopped now, so that doesn't really happen anymore. So that is now not a problem. Quartz coolers back over here. quartz coolers have now been buffed by default, so now they do 90 heat per tick of cooling rather than 70, I think it was before, and by the same token, the NAC quartz does 360 heat per tick, just like the redstone does, instead of the 280 it was doing before. Final thing with the reactors is if a reactor is being overcooled, then instead of producing a comparator level proportional to its heat, it will now output a comparator signal proportional to the amount of energy it has stored. So that's another way of sort of stopping the reactor from producing too much energy and wasting its power. Moving on, back to these new multi-blocks. So beforehand, it was a bit of a pain sometimes to configure all these blocks. You had to configure them all individually and then place the next one, and then configure this one, and so forth. But now, thanks to Polyjon in the comments, thank you very much for your suggestion, because it was incredible. We had a lot of talking about this, but this would seem to be the best solution to me. If you now edit the sides like this, then if you hold down Sneak and then Place, you will see that the configuration gets copied across to the next block. So that will make it a lot quicker to place down big chains of tubes, and it also works for the coolant heaters in the molten salt reactor and also the fission vessels as well. So that should massively speed up that. Next, we have these new batteries. So we have the basic ones from before, but now we have the Advanced, DU, and Elite, and these all just store more and more energy. Just be careful in the configs, because by default, obviously the storage increases from basic all the way up to elite, but because of the way the configs were changed, if you don't reset your battery configs, sometimes I think it's the advanced voltaic pile will have too much energy storage. So just make sure that you've got the config set up correctly. If for some reason you see that this has a ridiculous amount of storage compared to the ones next to it. But yes, this is bigger energy storage, because I think some people wanted some bigger energy storage with more voltage for IC2 and GregTech EU. So that's sort of the answer for that. I don't really want to have these in later versions of NuclearCraft. When I do an overhaul, I'll probably make a sort of battery multi-block sort of thing. But for now, this is sort of the solution, the short option. Next, added Anvil repairs recipes for the tools and the armor. So, for example, here I have this hard carbon sword, and I can now put hard carbon ingots here and fix this sword up. And similarly, I've got this boron nitride chest plate, and I can fix this up with some crystals. And so yeah, all of the tools and all of the armor now have these repairing recipes. And that's pretty much it. The final thing to say is that, as you can notice, some of the GUIs now have a bit of colour. Because it's the holidays, and I thought it'd be quite nice to add a little bit of colour to the otherwise slightly bland GUIs, some people said before. So yes, and also in JR you'll see a bit of colour as well. So thank you all very much for watching this update video. That's pretty much it. Hopefully you all have a very nice Christmas, and if I don't see you before, have a very good New Year as well. We'll get the turbine update as soon as possible out to you guys. And then we can do a spotlight on that, and NuclearCraft, as it was sort of meant to be from the start, would sort of be complete, at least for now. There's obviously a lot more to do on the to-do list other than that, but I feel like turbines will be sort of the end of a chapter in the progression this mod has taken. So yes, thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.